What? Okay, the class is recorded now. So today I want to start with a review of
Can you make this to work?
Yeah, what to work?
The audio.
the homework is, going back is to show, for you to share, to talk about autism. I think Saima did a revision, right? Let's see. And then, here we go. How does everyone feel about explaining it now? So I think Ayati and I actually, all of you guys, you just have to give examples. So have you practiced explaining autism?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I feel like in the most recent homework, the first question was kind of that. Is that correct? Right? Okay. So I feel like that was the whole process of explaining it.
Right. The decision making, because it does involve the core deficits related to autism.
But the first question was explaining it using examples from your life, and the second one was the but is that one better this time?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. Okay.
It overlaps. You guys can see each other's homework, right? So it's very important that I think it's important. It should be. Let me know if you are not able to see each other's homework. Ayati, you haven't done your homework, right? Your homework is still missing for the last class. So Saima's homework is here. Saima did a nice job. Oh, this is Victoria. This is Victoria's explaining the core deficits to family, making best fit decisions. Yeah, I like how you guys are using more of your experiences as examples and stories. Telling stories is how you're going to help people understand the core deficits and how to explain autism. So it's a really, really good idea to, if you see something in your life or in the kids you work with, to just write it down, because those are things that you can help parents understand when you meet with them. Yeah, so Victoria has a lot of nice examples. Can you access it or not? Can you tell me? Because I don't, this is Simon's homework.
I'm on the Google Classroom, and I think I can only look at my own things.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know if there's a way to change that or not. But maybe for the time being, you guys have each other's email. You can just send each other all the homework. You know, so just do that after class so you can read each other's homework. So there's some really, really good examples. So your video of interaction with husband, that was really cute. So what did your husband say to be part of the experiment and being videotaped?
I tried not to give him a lot of information.
That's good. You just have to do it. So Victoria practiced using the Clara test and slowing down with her husband, trying to actually get him to fold laundry.
Oh, wow.
That was cute. That was cute. It made me laugh. So I think this video, I think there's a way you could share it. Let me see here. What would happen if it's turned in? So here's the video. So I think you could download this. You can download this. I don't know.
I can probably try an email and everything after class.
You could try to email it. Do you use Dropbox at all?
I have used it before. I'm not super familiar with it. I can try.
So here's the thing. You might as well just practice using YouTube. You have a
Mm.
YouTube account, right?
Yeah.
What you could do is you can upload it into YouTube. You could do it as private, and then you can put Ayati's and Sima's email in there. So just privately share it. So the same way with Ayati, you had some nice videos too of Vincent and you. So you could do, you know how to upload into YouTube, right, Ayati?
Yes.
Okay, so just do that and just share it privately with Saima and Victoria.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
that
Okay.
way you can share your homework. Your video in the car with Vincent is very sweet.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
So that's a really good example of using dynamic communication. That's a really good example of mutual engagement, actually. Very, very nice. Okay.
Yes.
So Saima, you don't have a video yet, right, Saima?
Yeah, sorry. I was supposed to do one with Imran. We weren't able to get our schedules to match up. So I ended up submitting one that I like. It's my favorite one of with Safe.
Okay, did you already submit it?
Yeah, and I'm really sorry. I think I submitted it a couple days ago.
Oh, I didn't.
It was turned in late.
So let me open it up.
And the reason I like that particular one is it's one that I find tends to work if we're out and I need him to come back to me. I'm not really sure why that is, but I think it's something that he tends to enjoy.
So I only see your written one. There's no video.
There's a link to YouTube.
No, okay, unless it's within the document.
Yeah, it's in the document. It's a link to YouTube.
Oh. Yeah, so this is gonna be hard. It needs to be separated, like, let me see here. I can't open it this way because the link is not live.
Okay.
So I think you need to do it just separately. There is a link on top here that you can maybe make the link live, but it needs to be separate maybe. If it's within the document itself, I think we cannot open it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So that's that. Okay, let me just close all this. Do you have any other questions about the topics we went through? We went last time. Any questions? No? Okay. Let's just, so today it's actually going to be like a review for, I think, most of you, because even Victoria is familiar with, well, if you're familiar with RDI, you know about how we use communication differently. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So you've practiced slowing down, you practice mindful communication. Okay, so this is the PowerPoint for today, and I will upload it later. So do you all agree that the first process is for the guys to slow down first? Otherwise, they just fall back into using static communication, right? So static communication, other words for it would be imperative. So that's another word, how like we just use instructions and close-ended questions. So, but I think that if we say static communication, I think people can understand what that is. Maybe not so much. I think you have to give examples. Actually, people use mostly static communication and they don't know that's what they're using. So you do have, that's why we videotape our assessment. And even if you're there, you videotape just their interaction for 10 minutes so that I ask people to send me 10-minute video clips. It's very clear that's what they're using, right? They're only using verbal channel. It's just one way type of, that's another word for it. one-way communication that they're using. It's not really nurturing that back and forth communication. So it makes sense for parents to really slow down, and even to do mutual engagement. If you don't slow down, it's very hard to do it because you fall back into doing the task, right? So let's see. So the first thing we want to help parents understand, and also help all of you guys here understand, is what kind of a communicator, what kind of communication style do you use? It's actually very interesting for myself. When I started this, I was very, very imperative because I think it's cultural, very cultural, I think, in Asia, to we're just very direct. We're very nosy. If we like to ask questions that are actually the kind of questions that would be considered like none of your business in America. We don't like to talk about the weather. We don't like to, the small talk is very, very hard for Asian people. So I don't know about you, Saima, in your culture, the way your upbringing, what was your upbringing like, and how did your parents use communication?
Oh, my parents were very traditional Pakistani parents. They basically told us what to do and we had to do it. And that was pretty much,
that's very
similar.
Yeah, so Asian parents are like that. I think Ayati and I could relate to that. For example, dinner time for me, for my family, we don't really talk about our days. Eating was supposed to be eating, so it's just different upbringing, different mindset, different focus on what's important as a family. So when you work with you're going to be working with different kinds of families coming from different cultures. You want to keep this in mind. I think for Asian culture, it's harder because your upbringing was like that, as opposed to, I think, families from like Western families, just culturally, they're just more open and more engaging. But because of the autism or the special needs, then they become imperative. So I think to kind of awaken that sense of the kind of style of communication that's being used is not natural with this child, it's easier for them to go back to their roots. Does that make sense? So Victoria, how was your parents? How were they? Do you remember?
I feel like my family, I think we would fall more into that open category. Where especially my mom, she was very interested in how we were feeling and about our day and whatnot. I feel like my dad was he's very quiet and reserved, and he was definitely more avoiding those kinds of topics.
He's not. He's just more of an introvert.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, and you feel like you're in between.
I feel like that.
Yeah. I think for me, I learned to be more dynamic, just be more mindful because of RDI. I think otherwise I would be a different kind of parent, totally different kind of parent. So you want to think about your roots, going back to your roots, and it just kind of realize like your upbringing, because the way your parents were with us, that leaves a mark. That's an imprint, right? So you just have to realize, okay, am I like using communication mostly in an imperative way? And then the other way also, if you talk a lot, like I talk a lot. Actually, I talk a lot about certain things with certain people. But through RDI, I think I learned to be more engaging and be more compassionate. So when I was an ABA therapist, I felt like I was in the position of power to make things happen. Like I have an hour and a half to make things happen by redesigning the program. And I was a lot more, what's the word? I gave people a lot of prompt. I gave people a lot of tips, but there wasn't much why behind it. You know, I was just telling them you need to do this and this and this and this, but it was just different, if you know what I mean. I think it was not, RDA was like a lot more like slower, and the relationship and the communication would always come first. So whenever you interact with parents, you implement the same principles where you want to take your time, you want to make sure that they know you are a good listener, and you want to use the spaces, the communication spaces, where you actually ask them, what did you think about that? Or give them some, ask them for some examples. You know, there has to be more back and forth. Does that make sense? So I think I learned that through RDI, just to have a much better bedside manner. And that's so different than when I was doing other programs therapeutically. And even if, although not RDA consultants are like this, of course, because some people still feel like, well, I know a lot more than you do. That's something I learned to undo with RDI, because it's not true that I know everything. And part of, you know, this work relationship is that you want to establish that partnership, that we make discoveries along the way together. So it's very, very different, right? So you have to catch yourself when people are telling you things that you know is not necessarily correct. You know what I mean? And you want to assess, okay, are they ready to hear what I'm about to say? And you have to decide, should I say it or not? You see what I mean? Because otherwise it'll just go in one ear, it comes out the other ear. You know, and in general, parents have been lectured a lot before they come to us. And I can talk to them until my face turned blue about what kind of relationship, what changes, and the difference. If they're not ready to hear it, they're not ready to hear it. And it's my job to read it. And if they're not ready, I have to just, in that moment, okay, I'm not going to talk about that lesson that I prepared to talk about during this meeting. I have to just go back to the basics. So that it's very hard, because you have to just be 100% present when you are sitting down with parents, because it's our job to pick the subtle cues and decide. Lots of times, I think in general, when parents are feeling very, very insecure and anxious, I think the best way is not to give them too much, of course, because they won't remember. So it's just, and every meeting with the same family might be different. But for me, I usually do a little bit of like work with child, or I will watch the parent work with the child. That's very, very common, because there is a point where I have to transfer that responsibility to the parents, so that I could see their progress when they're working with the child. And remember, just because a lot of times the kids, you are a novelty, they will do very well with you because we are not their parents. But the problem is this. Frequently, a parent will see you work with a child, and the child will do so well. And that makes that parent feel more incompetent, right? It makes them feel like, I will never be able to do that. My child will never be able to do that with me. You know, for some families, it's like that. So it's just very delicate, I think, working with a family, and you go through these different phases that it's our job to really guide them, um, just with your heart first. It's what with a parent. I think to become a good parent coach is do your heart has to be connected to them, and that comes first, your heart, and then the relationship, and then I feel like everything will come together slowly. So I love working with my clients for years and years, from the time that they're 7 years old and now they're 18, and that's just, I think that's very special. And there's really no such a thing as, okay, it's done. As long as you and the family decide together, there's still room for improvement. Then you can decide that you continue this partnership. So that's the beauty of it. The communication part is actually, again, it's the heart of it, because if you can't trust each other, and you can't make adjustment as a consultant, then it will be very hard to be a parent coach, Okay, so everything that we want to be able to do with a client, it's the same objectives that the consultant has to be able to do themselves, and the consultant has to be able to do with the parents, and then the parents will be able to do it with the child. So it's the same, right? The type of communication that would enhance the mindful communication, being mindful when we communicate, is to establish the guiding relationship. So the parents and you have to trust each other. So the parent can see you as their guide. So that's important. I think establishing a guiding relationship with dads, it's harder because we're just different gender. So Ayati and her husband, actually, they are a great couple because they really do this together, right, Ayati? That was amazing. I think it really changed their relationship. And even though Ayati's the one practicing more, I think that this is her situation is an ideal situation. They work with our clinician in Jakarta, February. But there is really, when you establish that trust with the clients, there really no rush, right? Because if clients ask you a question, is he ready to do this? And you feel like, well, that's too hard, not ready for whatever reason, then they trust you. There's no rush. You know what I mean? So that's the ideal situation. But I'm lucky because Pete helps me with the dads, but the dads have to establish the trust, with you somehow. Now, I tell you, my knowledge of sports really helps. My obsession with basketball, that really helps, because now I love basketballs, but I'm interested in other things. Like I know a little bit about football, I know a little bit about soccer, I can watch tennis, So actually, I recommend that. I know you might not like sports. I actually don't do any sports at all. I don't exercise. I have to exercise, but I don't. But if you can develop an interest somewhere, I think a sport, your knowledge of sport, just start watching videos. And then I think that helps you to have that universal language to connect with dads. So I could be doing an online meeting with my clients in Taiwan, and the dad's there, and we could talk about the team he likes. Sports is universal. You know what I mean? So in Ayati, so in Indonesia, it will be soccer, badminton. So Saimai, it would be like, what is it in India? Cricket, right? Cricket is huge in India, and soccer also. No?
Yeah, in Pakistan it's cricket and soccer. I know nothing about cricket because I was born here, and so my brother and I we didn't really grow up with cricket, so we don't actually really know anything about it, and Imran doesn't either.
Well, the thing about sports, there's a lot of coaching involved, right? And also group sports, there's a lot of multi-channel communication. That's all they do on the court is they look at each other, they read each other, and it's really it's great for you to be able to use examples. So when we have meetings, usually I'll ask, do you watch sports, and that opens up. You can totally see how the dads actually relax. The small talk, actually, it's very important in what we do, because that's how we get to know each other, and so on. Because a lot of times dads will look at us as, okay, well, she's going to tell me more things to do, like my wife. Like, I actually have had like this dad from Los Angeles, this family. That was the first question the father asked. Are you going to tell me like what to do, just like my wife? That was his first question. I said, no, but so knowing how to relate to dads, it's actually really important. I think it's really good for you guys to talk to your spouses. Like, so what kind of topic is there, if there's any new interest I can develop to be able to relate to like men in this country? So what would it be? Because I think your spouses will help give you some insights. My guess would be they would say sports would be a pretty generic thing, so just pick one. Sports is actually, for me, it gives me something to look for me personally. It gives me something different to think about, to look forward to, so just something to keep in mind, right? So mindful communication, we build trust and closeness, and we increase the back and forth communication. And this is something also I want to keep you to remind you that when you watch videos and you annotate videos, it's the same style of communication. You don't want to say too much, you want to say just enough, but how you say it, it's all declaratives, and of course polite, and you have to pick and choose what you write, what you narrate. So when I annotate, I usually try to give as many examples if possible, but there will be a point where I ask parents that you need to send me narrations and what you see from your video. So there's that point where you transfer the responsibility back to the parents, right? So you want to be able to spotlight meaningful experiences. If you say too much, if you write too much when you annotate the videos, nothing will stand out. So you really have to think about where they are right now with what they're working on, and stick to it, even though you see a million things that could be done differently, right? So you want to model thoughtfulness. That's always important. You want to, of course, build resilience, right? So when people tell you, oh, I suck at this, I don't know how to do this, and or if they don't send you videos, if people don't send me videos for a while, usually if they're new, it means like they're being overly critical, which is an obstacle, because none of their videos in their mind is good enough, even though I tell parents, okay, if it's not good, I still want to see it, because those kind of videos are actually the most helpful. So we want to also build creative problem solving, and we want to focus on the thinking and not just the doing, which is really, really hard. Even harder, I think, for Asian people, because we're very task oriented. It's very hard for us to be in the moment. Okay, so the purpose of communication, this is a good slide for you to practice, to experience, share. Of course, we want to share, to compare and contrast about something. So your homework is to actually practice with your partner. Maybe it's fun to practice with your husband as well as practicing with a child if possible, because it's going to look different, but the purpose is the same. Does that make sense? So a lot of times when we're having conversation is like this, experience sharing. When we're doing an activity or a game, we do a lot of regulating and repairing, right? Like wait for me, or you're going too fast. 1, 2, 3, ready, set, go. So that's all communication for this one. Wandering is like actually stopping to wander ahead of you. I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder, just being curious. Maybe you're wondering, if this movie is going to be scary enough, or, so you haven't done the activity, but you're just wondering, it's more abstract. So referencing each other would be sharing your emotional state. Like I feel like this, or like just, it could be also, remember all of this could also be using nonverbal communication channel. Like looking at each other to see if the other person understands what you're currently thinking about or what you were saying. So that's referencing each other. So we do a lot of we go. Again, when we're doing activities together or a game together, we do a lot of we go, like let's do, whenever we say let's, right? That's the two of us. Like we built this, or maybe if you're cooking together, you do a lot of this. We made this together, and so on. We failed, or that didn't turn out. Allying, right? Anticipating. That's where we're doing a lot of our previews. We're gonna do this together, and it's just kind of rehearsing. Like we do this a lot before we do an activity, or maybe we're looking at recipes and we want to figure out what to choose together to make. So reflecting, pondering past experiences for motivation and learning. So actually all of this you could do. I was thinking like the anticipation of for me and Emma to go see a scary movie. I could do that theme, just doing this like before going to the movies all the way until when we were done watching the movies. We can just do all this. Can you picture that? So do you have any questions about this? No, you could picture it, right? Like I was actually in the movies, there was a point in the movie where the scary stuff is coming. Well, I knew it. So I kind of nudged Emma. I said, okay, Emma, you ready? So that's this one, just trying to brace the moment together. So yeah, so think about ways that you can practice. So the science behind mindful communication is to engage in the executive center, the prefrontal cortex. I will give you Dr. Dan Siegel's YouTube video clip series. He's a neuropsychologist in Southern California, and he creates short video clips for just to explain what happens when we're actually engaging with another person, and how we actually develop critical thinking, and we engage, we connect, we stimulate the prefrontal cortex when we use mindful communication. So those video clips, because they're short and he explains them in a very, very simple way, that is actually really, really helpful for you to actually, when you explain certain things with dads, they tend to be more concrete. So using short video clips like Dr. Siegel's video clips would be really helpful, because then you get their buy into it, right? So that's usually want to know, like, why do I have to do this? You know, what's the theory behind it? You know, otherwise it's very hard to convince them. And mom tends to, because we're more emotional, okay, just tell me, you know, I'll do it. I don't need to know the reason behind it. I will do it. But dads are a little bit different. Okay. I think these are actually, it might be already in here in the Dan Siegel. Okay. So let me see if there's anything. Using mindful communication, the communicative pace is slow. There is like that back and forth. You can clearly see that back and forth. Communicative pace is slow and models the deliberation. If the partner is not able to send or return, it means you just have to slow down even more and just be more deliberate. And also, people make a common mistake of not pausing long enough when the partner has issues with processing. You have to use a long pause. Otherwise, they don't have time to process and definitely won't have time to give you the output, right? Balance of communication channels, that's really important, because people tend to overcompensate by verbally talking. Just even though it's all declaratives, you guys, but there's such a thing as talking too much, using too much declaratives, so that it's too much information. It's true, right? So we when we watch videos, we want to just look at the balance. You know, when you watch a video, there might be parts of that video where you're just a little bit fast because the child was connected with you, but there are times that you see the parents really slow down the process. So you see that kind of peaks and valleys, but in the end, it looks very balanced. You know, the back and forth, the use of all channels of communication, there are communication pauses in there, so it looks very balanced. So when you can see that the parents would give the child opportunities to send or to respond in his own ways. So that definitely there's that back and forth, okay? We want to see that parents respond to the child's verbalizations with nonverbal communication. That's actually hard to see, because parents usually just respond to some kind of verbals, and even though it's declaratives, I think the child actually needs to process the nonverbal communication more. Like, so we should see parents nodding their head more and smiling instead of verbals. So that's something that we work a lot with parents at the beginning. Primarily ask questions to be curious instead of getting a specific right answer. So using the open-ended questions, right? Like, I wonder how it would taste. Yeah, all the open-ended questions. What do you think about this? And so on. Communication is used primarily to direct attention, to invite, to increase coordination of joint attention, all this in the previous slide we talked about, okay? So how to slow down your communication pacing. So when you practice this, creating a video with your spouse, of course the pacing is not, because he's neurotypical. The pacing, even though you try to slow it down, it just naturally will just pick up, because that send and return happens just naturally. But when you actually practice with your child with special needs, I think it's different. So for Ayati and Saima, if you practice with your neurotypical child versus practicing with your special needs child, it's gonna be different. So that's why I want you to practice both ways. How do we slow down the communication pacing? This is the stuff that we teach parents. We need to count, up to 10. We want to check in. So we always have to look at the child to analyze our child's current state of mind. And also making the actions more slower and deliberate. People forget that you can actually slow down your actions in addition to slowing down what you say or how you use your nonverbal communication. It's like if you're making a face, you just freeze it until the child actually processes that, right? Using facial expressions to connect and to help the apprentice to calm down through you. So that's important. Actually, it's important for self-regulation because when our face is calm and they see that, that helps them to self-regulate. So managing anxiety by slowing down, what it means is that we want to do fewer repetitions, less calling names, reducing the imperative language, and we want to practice more using multi-channel communication. And this, again, this is a process of developing everything we just talked about over time with parents. So we model it, we review their videos, we give them one thing at a time to focus on. So once they're able to manage their anxiety, then they can realize, okay, I'm overcompensating, and this is how I overcompensate. Letting the learning process unfold between the guide and the apprentice, it's a process, right? So the parents have to want to learn. If the parents don't want to learn, or they think that, like anxious parents usually, how it's very hard for them to remember because in the moment the anxiety takes over. So allowing time for parents and our children to process information and context. So just need time. Let me see. Okay, so I think I'm gonna stop here. Okay, so do you have any questions with what we talked about just now? Okay. So Victoria, do you remember, I don't know how much RDI, like the process at the beginning when your family decided to take on RDI, were you part of that process at that point? Like, did Kim actually talk to you about all this stuff?
Kim didn't really talk to me as much, but kind of towards the middle of the process, my mom was like, yeah, you can come join our meetings every once in a while if you'd like to. But I definitely, as you were going through each of the different ways to the different purposes,
Mm-hmm.
I really I connected in my mind a lot of things that we do that they've made really useful.
So I think what I see a lot with neurotypical siblings, because the parents change, they just naturally pick up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool.
It makes me sad when I see siblings, neurotypical siblings. They're like 4 or 5, but they're very ABA, like becoming the role of that teacher, and the parents think, oh, that's so great. We have a free like teacher at home, and like have a big sister, or it could be a little brother, just tell, do this, don't do that, because that's all they see, and that actually sticks, so when the parents actually change, as much as that's why we do work at home, because we can pick up these family dynamics, because we can only coach kids so so much, right? But they actually copy what we do,
Yeah,
not
for
what
sure.
we say. And even little kids, it's like that too, you know. So this is the lesson today. I think your videos, I think, will be very interesting. So I'll write up the homework for next time where, you know, you can videotape and then you can narrate it. You can analyze it to see, you know, based on the few slides we use. And if you have the opportunity to practice with the neurotypical and then not neurotypical, I think it would be cool to compare and contrast. But I don't know, Victoria, if you have a chance. I mean, you don't work with anybody right now, so can you practice with a person with special person with special needs?
I'm still at the school for another 2 weeks, so maybe next week I could see if I can pull somebody for maybe after school.
This videotape,
mm-hmm.
because it's different. It's very different.
Yeah.
You know, but it's nice to so your video clips for the next class would be amazing to discuss, and we can practice actually annotating these clips together. I think that would be a lot of fun to do it. Okay, do you have any other question? Ayati, you have any questions? You have 2 boys to practice with, and Saima, you too. You have Save and then your girls to practice with.
Maybe I nggak begitu ngerti banget, tapi nanti saya pelajari ulang lagi.
Okay, so you're gonna review the video. Okay. Okay, that's okay. I'm sorry if I speak too fast. It's okay. She said she doesn't understand everything, but she's gonna go back and review the video. That's what she was saying. Okay, Simon, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so. I think a lot of the stuff I'm finding is really helpful with my eldest daughter, actually, because she's very well. One, she's very literal, which is challenging for me, and then the other thing is she's very inflexible, like incredibly inflexible.
Like Colin.
So like things just have to be they just have to be like a particular way, and if they're not that way, and then everything is just a no-go. And she has a very hard time sort of seeing like the nuances of how things can possibly be. So I actually worked this up in the homework assignment. We were making tiaras the other day, and hers ended up sort of like ripping a little bit. And then my middle daughter was like, "Oh, we can just tape it." Yeah. And she goes, "No, it's like ruined." And and like it was done. Like there was like nothing I could say or do to get her to see
just like
of like any other way where we can like, you know, just solve the problem.
Yeah,
and move
that's
on.
The thing, right? Their brain is a bit different. I mean, I say that all the time about like Colin and how it's really hard for them to understand and use that gray area thinking. Like Colin would tell me, you know, I hate it when you say at some point. What does that mean exactly? At some point. Because that means he can't control it. You know, it's just, but I think there are ways that you can, and also Victoria with your brother as well, right? That lack of concreteness is very hard for them to understand. Well, I just have to go with it. You know, that's so important for them to be able to work successfully, because when you're in a work environment, you have to work with other people who don't know that you need this black and white thing, you know. So what we have to develop with Colin and Miriam, and also with Victoria's brother, is just that ability to go with the flow. I guess that's the theme. That's the objective, is to be able to go with the flow.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to help Miriam with.
Yes.
It's interesting.
Flow, right?
I feel like Saif is the one who's on the spectrum is actually more flexible than his sister. Like you can eventually get him to go with the flow, but Miriam has a very hard time going with the flow.
Yeah, I know, but that's where, I mean, we're very fortunate. I think we know that's what we need to work on, and that's good enough thinking. going with the flow is that good enough thinking, and that's so important to develop like now, because when they're older and they know how to do so many things in a competent way, it's hard to get their buy into of like, why do I need to be flexible if my way is brilliant? Like I go get by, right? Victoria, do you have some examples with your brother where you told me a little bit about him? And
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like he's definitely grown a lot, but
yeah.
even now, he's gotten to the point where he's ready to go with the flow, but he still has this idea in his mind of how it's going to
Yes.
go, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, for example, we were going to go out to dinner. I think I actually put this in one of the in the homeworks. And we decided, we already previewed what we were going to do. We were going to go to this restaurant and this way.
Yeah.
But then when we were on the way, my aunt, who doesn't understand his challenges, she's like, oh, we could go here, we could go
Right.
there. Oh,
Yeah.
this would be really fun. And he's just getting so
Oh.
overwhelmed. And he's just sitting there and you can see he's about to get be really upset about it. And I'm just like, but even now, like that, even though he didn't immediately respond negatively to that, he he knows that he's learned to expect that it's okay to go with the flow, even if it is uncomfortable. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a very good example, and it happens a lot, and you do have to work on it, because when he works, he's gonna have to be flexible, but although here in the Silicon Valley, when I do people watching, there's so many people who are clearly spectrumy, and they just go out to lunch together, and they're happy.
I love it.
Just hang out with each other. They could do whatever they want in their quirky way. So it's just like, I do believe in the neurodiversity move, that you do have to respect them the way they are, because that's also their superpower. But as their family members, we have to develop the awareness of things they have to work on. You know what I mean? So what I would do is, of course, model it for your brother. So just put him in the driver's seat of like, you plan the whole thing. And
he plans the whole thing.
Yeah, you plan the dinner where we're gonna go, but just the condition is that you're going to think about your Aunt Betty, or mom has gluten-free whatever diet. You plan it, and see how people actually go with see how it's successful or not. And then you just take turns, so eventually he's going to have the episodic memory of, oh, actually that turned out to be okay, that was not what I expected, but I handled it. So with Colin, because he's still picky eaters, he's very picky still. I asked myself this question: so what would be the good enough point for me, where I just let it go, until someday in the future, because I've already practiced and prepared him, and he knows that it's hard for him. He knows it's up to him. Then at some point there, we have to let it go. Otherwise, the transfer of the objective is not going to be, you know what I mean? So that's just a question that we ask parents, what is good enough? So anyways, okay, so let's talk about schedule for, I can't believe it's already May.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, where's my calendar? Okay, so so it would be May 4th. same time.
Oke. May
I'm
4
actually
ya.
oh sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm actually flying to Florida to see my brother
Okay.
at 9:30 that day. But
Okay.
maybe
So
we could
you
do it in
want to
the
do it on
evening.
Sunday morning?
Yeah, I think I could do that. Or
Oh wait,
in
but
the evening too.
in the evening. Well, the problem is, Ayati, if we do
Yeah,
it,
it's true. Sorry, Ati. Sorry, Ati.
wait, so if we do it evening our time, it will be okay. So give me time that. So if we were to do it, oh, I know why. If we do it evening, it will be hard for Saima because she has to do it in the morning.
If we do it at like 10, is that what you
Actually,
mean?
the evenings are easier for me than the mornings because
Okay.
I know when my kids go to bed. I don't necessarily know when they wake up.
Okay, so what time, Victoria? In the evening, you want to do Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday. Maybe late Saturday.
Okay, like give me time, then we
Oh,
can.
sorry. When do Simon's kids go to sleep? We could do it after, which is kind of depending on you. That's fine. Absolutely.
Yeah. So usually like by 8:30 Pacific.
8:30. Okay,
It might be late for you in Florida.
What do you think?
So I think if we do, yeah, that's the problem.
Okay.
It gets too late also for Victoria because
I don't
Florida is what, 2 hours ahead or 3 hours?
3, but it's okay. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I
but
can do
you're
it.
gonna
It'll
be
be-
here, you're gonna be in Florida for a while. So if we actually do like 7 a.m. our time, it will be 11 a.m. your time. So if we keep it the same, right? So it's just not the 4th. So can
Yeah,
you
if we do it the following Saturday, that's the 5th.
or you want to do the 11th? Would 11 be better?
Probably.
We can change it.
Looking at my calendar, so I'm looking at
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we usually go to church in the morning on Sundays, my family.
Oh, but 11th is Saturday.
This Saturday. This Saturday I'll be in the air at 11.
Oh, 11th, you'll be flying back to the Bay Area?
Oh, do you mean 11 p.m. or 11 a.m.? Sorry.
No, May 11th.
May 11th. Oh, May 11th is perfectly fine.
Okay, so May 11th, 7 a.m. California
7
time. It'll be 11 a.m. your time.
Yeah.
And then Ayati, it will be 9 p.m. your time on the 12th.
11 May.
No, for you, it's the 12th at 9 p.m.
9 p.m. The date is 11. The date?
So the date is the 12th, tanggal 12.
Tanggal 12 jam 9 malam ya?
Yeah.
Oke.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Perfect.